Croesus, being informed of all these things, sent ambassadors to Sparta, with presents, and to request their alliance, having given them orders what to say, and when they were arrived they spoke as follows: Croesus, king of the Lydians and of other nations, has sent us with this message: O Lacedaemonians, since the deity has directed me by an oracle to unite myself to a Grecian friend, therefore, for I am informed that you are preeminent in Greece, I invite you in obedience to the oracle, being desirous of becoming your friend and ally, without treachery or guile. But the Lacedaemonians, who had before heard of the answer given by the oracle to Croesus, were gratified at the coming of the Lydians, and exchanged pledges of friendship and alliance, and indeed certain favors had been formally conferred on them by Croesus, for when the Lacedaemonians sent to Sardis to purchase gold, wishing to use it in erecting the statue of Apollo that now stands at Thornax in Laconia, Croesus gave it as a present to them. For this reason, and because he had selected them from all the Greeks, and desired their friendship, the Lacedaemonians accepted his offer of alliance, and in the first place they promised to be ready at his summons, and in the next, having made a great bronze bowl, capable of containing 300 amphorae, and covered it outside to the rim with various figures, they sent it to him, being desirous of making Croesus a present in return. But this bowl never reached Sardis, for one of the two following reasons. The Lacedaemonians say, that when the bowl, on its way to Sardis, was off Samos, the Samanes, having heard of it, sailed out in long ships, and took it away by force. On the other hand, the Samanes affirm, that when the Lacedaemonians who were conveying the bowl found they were too late, and heard that Sardis was taken and Croesus a prisoner, they sold the bowl in Samos, and that some private persons, who bought it, dedicated it in the temple of Juno. Croesus, mistaking the oracle, prepared to invade Cappadocia, hoping to overthrow Cyrus and the power of the Persians. Whilst Croesus was preparing for his expedition against the Persians, a Lydian named Sandanis, who before that time was esteemed a wise man, and on this occasion acquired a very great name in Lydia, gave him advice in these words: O king, you are preparing to make war against a people who wear leather trousers, and the rest of their garments of leather, who inhabit a barren country, and feed not on such things as they choose, but such as they can get. Besides, they do not habitually use wine, but drink water, nor have they figs to eat, nor anything that is good. In the first place, then, if you should conquer, what will you take from them, since they have nothing? On the other hand, if you should be conquered, consider what good things you will lose. For when they have tasted of our good things, they will become fond of them, nor will they be driven from them. As for me, I thank the gods, that they have not put it into the thoughts of the Persians to make war on the Lydians. Sandanis did not, however, persuade Croesus, for he proceeded to invade Cappadocia, as well from a desire of adding it to his own dominions, as a wish to punish Cyrus on account of Astyages. For Cyrus, son of Cambyses, had subjugated Astyages, son of Cyaxares, who was brother-in-law of Croesus, and king of Medes. Croesus, alleging this against him, sent to ask the oracle, if he should make war on the Persians, and when an ambiguous answer came back, he, interpreting it to his own advantage, led his army against the territory of the Persians. When he arrived at the river Elise, Croesus transported his forces, as I believe, by the bridges which are now there. But the common opinion of the Greeks is, that Thales the Milesian procured him a passage in the following way, whilst Croesus was in doubt how his army should pass over the river, for they say that these bridges were not at that time in existence. Thales, who was in the camp, caused the stream, which flowed along the left of the army, to flow on the right instead. He contrived it thus: having begun above the camp, he dug a deep trench, in the shape of a half-moon, so that the river, being turned into this from its old channel, might pass in the rear of the camp pitched where it then was, and afterward, having passed by the camp, might fall into its former course, so that as soon as the river was divided into two streams it became fordable in both. Some say, that the ancient channel of the river was entirely dried up, but this I cannot assent to, for how then could they have crossed it on their return? However, Croesus, having passed the river with his army, came to a place called Tyria, in Cappadocia. Now Tyria is the strongest position of the whole of this country, and is situated over against Sinope, a city on the Euxine Sea. Here he encamped and ravaged the lands of the Syrians, and took the city of the Tyrians, and enslaved the inhabitants. He also took all the adjacent places, and expelled the inhabitants, who had given him no cause for blame. But Cyrus, assembling his own army, and taking with him all who inhabited the intermediate country, went to meet Croesus. But before he began to advance, he sent heralds to the Ionians, to persuade them to revolt from Croesus, which the Ionians refused to do. When Cyrus had come up and encamped opposite Croesus, they made trial of each other's strength on the plains of Tyria, but when an obstinate battle took place, and many fell on both sides, they at last parted, on the approach of night, neither having been victorious. Croesus, laying the blame on his own army on account of the smallness of its numbers, for his forces that engaged were far fewer than those of Cyrus, marched back to Sardis, designing to summon the Egyptians according to treaty, and to require the presence of the Lacedaemonians at a fixed time. Having collected these together, and assembled his own army, he purposed, when winter was over, to attack the Persians in the beginning of the spring. With this design, when he reached Sardis, he dispatched ambassadors to his different allies, requiring them to meet at Sardis before the end of 5 months, but the army that was with him, and that had fought with the Persians, which was composed of mercenary troops, he entirely disbanded, not imagining that Cyrus, who had come off on such equal terms, would venture to advance upon Sardis. While Croesus was forming these plans, the whole suburbs were filled with serpents, and when they appeared, the horses, forsaking their pastures, came and devoured them. When Croesus beheld this, he considered it to be, as it really was, a prodigy, and sent immediately to consult the interpreters at Telmessus, but the messengers having arrived there, and learnt from the Telmessians what the prodigy portended, were unable to report it to Croesus, for before they sailed back to Sardis, Croesus had been taken prisoner. The Telmessians had pronounced as follows, that Croesus must expect a foreign army to invade his country, which, on its arrival, would subdue the natives, because, they said, the serpent is a son of the earth, but the horse is an enemy and a stranger. Cyrus, as soon as Croesus had retreated after the battle at Tyria, having discovered that it was the intention of Croesus to disband his army, saw that it would be to his advantage to march with all possible expedition on Sardis, before the forces of the Lydians could be a second time assembled. Whereupon Croesus, thrown into great perplexity, seeing that matters had turned out contrary to his expectations, drew out the Lydians to battle. At that time no nation in Asia was more valiant and warlike than the Lydians. Their mode of fighting was from on horseback, they were armed with long lances, and managed their horses with admirable address. The place where they met was the plain that lies before the city of Sardis, which is extensive and bare. The Hilus and several other rivers flowing through it force a passage into the greatest, called the Hermus, which, flowing from the sacred mountain of Mother Cybele, falls into the sea near the city of Phasaea. Here Cyrus, when he saw the Lydians drawn up in order of battle, alarmed at the cavalry, had recourse to the following stratagem, on the suggestion of Harpagus, a Mede. Collecting together all the camels that followed his army with provisions and baggage, and causing their burdens to be taken off, he mounted men upon them equipped in cavalry accoutrements, and ordered them to go in advance of the rest of his army against the Lydian horse. His infantry he bade follow the camels, and placed the whole of his cavalry behind the infantry. When all were drawn up in order, he charged them not to spare any of the Lydians, but to kill every one they met, but on no account to kill Croesus, even if he should offer resistance when taken. He drew up the camels in the front of the cavalry for this reason: a horse is afraid of a camel, and cannot endure either to see its form or to scent its smell. This then would render the cavalry useless to Croesus, by which the Lydian expected to signalize himself. Accordingly, when they joined battle, the horses no sooner smelt the camels and saw them, than they wheeled round, and the hopes of Croesus were destroyed. Nevertheless, the Lydians were not discouraged, but leapt from their horses and engaged with the Persians on foot. But at last, when many had fallen on both sides, the Lydians were put to flight, and being shut up within the walls, were besieged by the Persians. Sardis was taken in the following manner. On the 14th day after Croesus had been besieged, Cyrus sent horsemen throughout his army, and proclaimed that he would liberally reward the man who should first mount the wall. Upon this several attempts were made, and as often failed, till, after the rest had desisted, a Mardian, whose name was Herodotus, endeavored to climb up on that part of the citadel where no guard was stationed, for on that side the citadel was precipitous and impracticable. Herodotus had seen a Lydian the day before come down this precipice for a helmet that had rolled down, and carry it up again. He thereupon ascended the same way, followed by divers Persians, and when great numbers had gone up, Sardis was thus taken, and the whole town plundered. The following incidents befell Croesus himself. He had a son of whom I have before made mention, who was dumb. Now, in the time of his former prosperity, Croesus had done everything he could for him, and among other expedients had sent to consult the oracle of Delphi concerning him, but the Pythian gave him this answer. O foolish king of Lydia, do not seek to hear thy son within thy palace speak. Better for thee that pleasure to forego. The day he speaks will be a day of woe. When the city was taken, one of the Persians, not knowing Croesus, was about to kill him. Croesus, though he saw him approach, took no heed of him, caring not if he should die by the blow, but this speechless son of his, when he saw the Persian advancing against him, through dread and anguish, burst into speech, and said, Man, kill not Croesus. These were the first words he ever uttered, but from that time he continued to speak during the remainder of his life. So the Persians got possession of Sardis, and made Croesus prisoner, after he had reigned 14 years, been besieged 14 days, and lost his great empire, as the oracle had predicted. The Persians, having taken him, conducted him to Cyrus, and he, having heaped up a great pile, placed Croesus upon it, bound with fetters, and with him 14 young Lydians, designing either to offer this sacrifice to some god, as the first fruits of his victory, or wishing to perform a vow, or perhaps, having heard that Croesus was a religious person, he placed him on the pile for the purpose of discovering whether any deity would save him from being burned alive. When Croesus stood upon the pile, notwithstanding the weight of his misfortunes, the words of Solon recurred to him, as spoken by inspiration of the deity, that no living man could be justly called happy. When this occurred to him, it is said, that after a long silence he recovered himself, and uttering a groan, thrice pronounced the name of Solon. When Cyrus heard him, he commanded his interpreters to ask Croesus whom it was he called upon. Croesus for some time kept silence, but at last, being constrained to speak, said, I named a man, whose discourses I more desire all tyrants might hear, than to be possessor of the greatest riches. When he gave them this obscure answer, they again inquired what he said, and were very importunate. He at length told them that Solon, an Athenian, formerly visited him, and having viewed all his treasures, made no account of them, telling, in a word, how everything had befallen him as Solon had warned him, though his discourse related to all mankind as much as to himself, and especially to those who imagined themselves happy. The pile now was kindled, and the outer parts began to burn, when Cyrus, informed by the interpreters of what Croesus had said, relented, considering that being but a man, he was yet going to burn another man alive, who had been no way inferior to himself in prosperity, and moreover, fearing retribution, and reflecting that nothing human is constant, commanded the fire to be instantly extinguished, and Croesus, with those who were about him, to be taken down. But they with all their endeavors were unable to master the fire. Croesus, perceiving that Cyrus had altered his resolution, when he saw every man endeavoring to put out the fire, but unable to get the better of it, shouted aloud, invoking Apollo, and besought him, if ever any of his offerings had been agreeable to him, to protect and deliver him from the present danger. And the Lydians relate, as he with tears invoked the god, on a sudden clouds were seen gathering in the air, which before was serene, and that a violent storm burst forth and vehement rain fell and extinguished the flames, by which Cyrus, perceiving that Croesus was beloved by the gods, and a good man, when he had had him taken down from the pile, asked him the following question, Who persuaded you, Croesus, to invade my territories, and to become my enemy instead of my friend? He answered, O king, I have done this for your good but my own evil fortune, and the god of the Greeks who encouraged me to make war is the cause of all. For no man is so void of understanding as to prefer war before peace, for in the latter children bury their fathers, in the former, fathers bury their children. But, I suppose, it pleased the gods that these things should be so. Cyrus, having set him at liberty, placed him by his own side, and showed him great respect. But Croesus, absorbed in thought, remained silent, and presently turning round and beholding the Persians sacking the city of the Lydians, he said, Does it become me, O king, to tell you what is passing through my mind, or to keep silence?" Cyrus bade him say with confidence whatever he wished, upon which Croesus asked him, "What is this vast crowd so earnestly employed about?" He answered, "They are sacking your city, and plundering your riches." "Not so," Croesus replied, "they are neither sacking my city, nor plundering my riches, for they are no longer mine, they are ravaging what belongs to you." The reply of Croesus attracted the attention of Cyrus. He therefore ordered all the rest to withdraw, and asked Croesus what he thought should be done in the present conjuncture. He answered, "Since the gods have made me your servant, I think it my duty to acquaint you, if I perceive anything deserving of remark. The Persians, who are by nature overbearing, are poor. If, therefore, you permit them to plunder and possess great riches, you may expect the following results: whoso acquires the greatest riches, be assured, will be ready to rebel. Therefore, if you approve what I say, adopt the following plan: place some of your bodyguard as sentinels at every gate, with orders to take the booty from all those who would go out, and to acquaint them that the 10th must of necessity be consecrated to Jupiter, thus you will not incur the odium of taking away their property, and they, acknowledging your intention to be just, will readily obey." Cyrus was exceedingly delighted at this suggestion, and ordered his guards to carry it out. Then turning to Croesus, he said, "Since you are resolved to display the deeds and words of a true king, ask whatever boon you desire on the instant." "Sir," he answered, "the most acceptable favor you can bestow upon me is, to let me send my fetters to the god of the Greeks, whom I have honored more than any other deity, and to ask him, if it be his custom to deceive those who deserve well of him." Certain Lydians were accordingly sent to Delphi, with orders to lay his fetters at the entrance of the temple, and to ask the god, if he were not ashamed to have encouraged Croesus by his oracles to make war on the Persians, assuring him that he would put an end to the power of Cyrus, of which war such were the firstfruits, commanding them at these words to show the fetters, and at the same time to ask if it were the custom of the Grecian gods to be ungrateful. When the Lydians arrived at Delphi, and had delivered their message, the Pythian is reported to have made this answer: "The god himself even cannot avoid the decrees of fate, and Croesus has atoned for the crime of Gyges his ancestor in the 5th generation, who, being one of the bodyguard of the Heraclid, murdered his master, Candace, and usurped his dignity, to which he had no right." But although Apollo was desirous that the fall of Sardis might happen in the time of the sons of Croesus, and not during his reign, yet it was not in his power to avert the fates, but so far as they allowed he accomplished, and conferred the boon on him, for he delayed the capture of Sardis for the space of 3 years. Let Croesus know, therefore, that he was taken prisoner 3 years later than the fates had ordained, and in the next place, he came to his relief, when he was upon the point of being burnt alive. Then, as to the prediction of the oracle, Croesus has no right to complain, for Apollo foretold him that if he made war on the Persians, he would subvert a great empire, and had he desired to be truly informed, he ought to have sent again to inquire, whether his own or that of Cyrus was meant. But since he neither understood the oracle, nor inquired again, let him lay the blame on himself. And when he last consulted the oracle, he did not understand the answer concerning the mule, for Cyrus was that mule, inasmuch as he was born of parents of different nations, the mother superior, but the father inferior. For she was a Mede, and daughter of Astyages, king of Media, but he was a Persian, subject to the Medes. When Croesus heard this reply of the priestess of Apollo, he acknowledged the fault to be his and not the gods. The customs of the Lydians differ little from those of the Greeks. They are the first of all nations we know of that introduced the art of coining gold and silver, and they were the first retailers. The Lydians themselves say that the games which are now common to themselves and the Greeks, were invented by them during the reign of Attis, when a great scarcity of corn pervaded all Lydia. For when they saw famine staring them in the face, they sought for remedies, and some devised one thing, some another, and at that time the games of dice, knucklebones, ball, and all other kinds of games except draughts, were invented, for the Lydians do not claim the invention of this ancient game, and having made these inventions to alleviate the famine, they employed them as follows: they used to play one whole day that they might not be in want of food, and on the next, they ate and abstained from play. Thus they passed 18 years, but when the evil did not abate, but on the contrary, became still more virulent, their king divided the whole people into 2 parts, and cast lots which should remain and which quit the country, and over that part whose lot it should be to stay he appointed himself king, and over that part which was to emigrate he appointed his own son, whose name was Tyrannus. Those to whose lot it fell to leave their country went down to Smyrna, built ships, and having put all their movables which were of use on board, set sail in search of food and land, till having passed by many nations, they reached the Ombrissi, where they built towns, and dwell to this day. From being called Lydians, they changed their name to one after the king's son, who led them out. From him they gave themselves the appellation of Tyrrhenians.